Hello, good afternoon to each and everyone. Good afternoon to you, Brother John. Uh, it is really a pleasure to be back with you on the Heart of the Matter. It is back to be back with you on GMFM, actually, and to be doing this session, the Heart of the Matter, which essentially this is the ninth edition of the Heart of the Matter. And I am your host, Raphael Paul Pablo, well, Theophilus Raphael Paul Pablo. And I'm here with you on the GMFM platform. You know, Brother John continues to demonstrate his commitment to uplifting the mindset of our people, through this media platform. And you, our viewers and listeners, I'm happy that you continue to join us, taking time off your busy schedule. I encourage you to like our page, like the GMFM page, like the Heart of the Matter program. Share it around so that more people can be privy to what is being discussed here. Because you see, the content that is shared on GMFM and the content that is shared in as part of the Heart of the Matter program is not the typical content that you get with most other programs. As you know, there's a lot of trivia that's being shared. You just go on Facebook and you will see the things that's getting hundreds of thousands of likes, the things that's getting millions and tens of millions of likes. Not content that is uplifting, but content of just trivia, as I call it. And if most of what we consume is trivia, then we shall be developing a trivial society, a trivial mindset, a trivial people, because the things that you consume is what makes you who you are. So our content is intended to edify and enlighten and to address various matters of significance. That's why our guests usually come from a wide variety of backgrounds. And as I've said before, I'm not an expert on anything, but I'm just one of those very opinionated Grenadians. Yes. And I am of the opinion that given the fact that trivia pervades this media environment, Raphael Paul, Theophilus Raphael Paul, I am entitled to add my voice and share my perspectives on matters of consequence, matters of significance to the discourse relating to our governance and the development agenda. Now, in addition to that, regional and international affairs also direct my interest, especially our place as people of African origin and Africans in general in the human story. And it is against this background that I have with me this afternoon a gentleman of African origin, a man what born there. And I'm going to allow him to introduce himself to you. He is a young man. I'm close to 3 times his age, actually. And it's a colleague of mine that introduced me to him because he's very much involved in the whole Pan-African concept. And he's doing significant work out there on social media and elsewhere. So I'll allow him to tell you his name and to tell you which country in Africa he originates from and to give you a little background about himself. So at this point in time, I say a pleasant welcome. Welcome to our brother from Africa. Good afternoon, bro.
Good afternoon, comrade.
Yes. And can you tell us your name, which country in Africa you are from, and give us just a little background about yourself?
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Comrade Pigbin Odimwengu. Born in Africa, of course, in a colonial territory called Kenya. It's still colonial because it still holds the name of the territory. I am around 28 years old. Of course, born from most of the peasant families, raised in multinational tea farm companies that are actually land that was looted by the West during their periods. A company called Finlays, which you know originate from the UK. So my parents were tea pluckers in that company, and that's or tea pickers, and that's where I was raised for my primary education. Did my secondary education back to my home county. We call it a county here called Homa Bay, and then proceeded to the University of Embu, where I studied Bachelor of Education Arts, and I also served as the Secretary General of the Student Union. After that, I joined the national level, where I started by founding a political party called Accountability and Transparency Party. Irrespective of the challenges, we have not completely finished the registration of the party that will advocate for accountability and transparency in governance. But above all, I also became a presidential aspirant in 2022 election in Kenya here, where I presented myself to be the next president of this country. And I actually was disqualified just on some few technical requirements that were put in place. So I was not able to be on the ballot. Above all, I'm also a member and a co-chair of the Consciencism Philosophy and Ideological Study Group. And I'm also a member of Global Africa Congress that's pushing for reparatory justice for our freedom fighters, you know, the Mau Maus and other freedom fighters, and also reparations for what they did during the slavery and colonialism. So that's in a nutshell where I am.
That is in a nutshell where you are. Now, tell us a little bit more about your aspiration or your effort with regards participating in the presidential election, and what would have caused your name not to be on the ballot?
I thought that having gone close to 60 years doing election every day and the manifestos are the same, I was not actually able to understand why the manifestos are the same 60 years down the line, and why people who appear to be qualified enough in terms of finance and either age or potential could not actually meet the manifestos or agenda that were put during the independence. So I thought that maybe it's because they are not concerned or actually clearly affected. And as an ordinary citizen who struggle to make ends meet, I feel that I'm the ordinary citizen who actually being affected by the issues of this country. And therefore, I believe that by taking this step, I could be able to correct what I think has not been corrected for 60 years, to ensure that our people and the welfare of our people is actually satisfactory and satisfied. So that's why I took myself into the ballot. I feel there's people who have failed to actualize what is the vision of our country. And that's why I presented myself. So because my party had not completely been registered, because I lacked some few resources to register it fully, I was then able to go as a what you call independent candidate. So after that, actually, I presented my running mate. I was given papers for nominations, but the registrar or the chairperson of electoral board said that I must actually present the list of registered 50,000 registered members of this country who support my candidature, which of course I tried to do that. But again, he came with another rule to stop us completely. And his rule was that those names must come with photocopies of the identification card. That was technical knockout, because how do you go to a village, collect identification copies of individual, then photocopy them, return them back to the owners, then present them to our electoral body, which do not actually assure you how they're going to keep it safe and how they're going to dispose it. So that was a requirement that came close to a day towards a week towards the date we were supposed to submit the documents back. And that's how technically I was knocked out. But I was probably the youngest in that race. and I tried my best to ensure that I make a step for change, even though I couldn't get a space to do it.
So with that being the case, when is the next election due? And do you think that you will be ready by that time, that your political party will be fully registered and you'll be able to get on the ballot?
Yes, the next election will be taking place in 2027, which is clearly around now close to 4 to 3 years down the line. Yes, I have gone back to ensure that I fully revive my political party. I'm in the process of reviewing the constitution currently. I'm in touch with the Office of Registered Political Parties. And I'm hoping towards, what stopped me last time is I didn't get enough resources to open or register offices that are required by law, around 24 offices, and register around 1,000 members per county. And that was more of a financially challenging a bit, because you see, I was just a young man with a vision, probably with no finance enough to accomplish the vision. I thought there would be people with finance who could come to support the vision so that you can move forward. But also I thought the ordinary citizen could try to contribute the little they have to own a political party that can give them space, especially the ordinary young and the women and other union workers. So I'm going back again. I'm trying to re-strategize to ensure that I try again for the other time. You see, winners don't give up. They keep on doing it. So that's what I'm planning.
Yes, it's true. Winners never quit. Brother John is one who lives by that mantra. You know, that winners never quit. And one of the things that we aspire to do on this platform, this GEM-FM platform, and with the Heart of the Matter program, is to sensitize people on issues, to raise awareness, and to help to change mindsets. And you yourself are involved with another program, with your own efforts in that regard. You have the Consciencism program that you have actually taken time off this afternoon to join us. So you are going to be here with us for about 1 hour. Can you tell us a bit about that program?
Yes, Consciencism is a philosophy and ideology by Osagafio Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Nkrumah have it studied, and you know Nkrumah had a degree in philosophy.
Yeah, so this is a name that is very well known by those of us who follow African history and who appreciate our African roots.
Yes, so Nkrumah, having studied philosophy, he did analysis of all philosophies available in this world by then. But he realized that there could only be one philosophy and ideology that could fit the African setup. And that philosophy, he called it Consciencism or Consciencism. And then he wrote a book called Consciencism or Consciencism. And this book was actually written in the process of the practical thing that he was doing in order to liberate Ghana. And he had a reading club of few people whom he could take to his Chester house, and they could actually sit every day and write and discuss the book on a blackboard. So he discussed this for a period of time to raise consciousness as he was checking philosophy in retrospect, philosophy and society, consciencism and development. And then that is the philosophy that we are studying called consciencism. Now, when Nkrumah actually was, you know what happened, the overthrow of Nkrumah through the coup, his books were totally banned, including this book now we are studying, were banned. Of course, there are other books he wrote, including Neocolonialism, which actually attracted a lot of attention from the CIA and the rest, that actually led to ultimate disposal of him. But all along, we get that I met in 2022 towards my election, towards my aspiration of being a president. I was introduced to a group of very progressive Pan-Africans who actually some live in diaspora in UK. And these progressive Pan-Africans were actually doing what Nkrumah was doing then in 1950s to 60s. They was meeting in a room or in a hall in London physically to discuss the same book. So they had done this over a period of time. In fact, they had done it close to 10 years, dedicating themselves over a weekly basis to read a paragraph and discuss it extensively. Over 10 years. This is what these progressive Pan-Africans did, just in order to understand a philosophy and an ideology that can be the tool towards the liberation, unification, and development of Africa. So when I was introduced in 2022, actually, I joined their WhatsApp group, and I got interested in learning this. a progressive leader, I realized that it's very important for me to equip myself with a philosophy and ideology. So we then moved to, we were meeting in what you call, we were doing it on it was not on Zoom by then. So we kept on meeting virtually, then on a Microsoft Teams. That's where we were meeting. Then that reading of the book ended by around January 2023 or February. Then I told them that it's need now for us to open this reading to more Pan-Africans. Then we moved to Zoom. So we started reading again via Zoom. So we meet every Thursday, read a paragraph, and discuss or share our thinking in order to build proper critical thinking and consciousness. And we've been doing this since May last year. Up to date is when we are actually finishing the first chapter, which is 30 pages. And you can tell now, if you could take 6 months to do or 7 months to do only 30 pages, you can tell how extensive is that reading and discussion every week. So this is what you've been doing actually to help and build consciousness. And we are open enough for Pan-Africans to actually understand that in order to carry out our objectives in Pan-African field, we need a right philosophy and a right ideology. And if you can have that common philosophy and common ideology, then you can have common direction towards achieving and implementing our vision.
Well, I had the occasion to join one of these sessions, and I can tell you I found it to be rather deep. And it was really seeing a side of Kwame Nkrumah that many of us are not privy to. Because when we think of Kwame Nkrumah, we think about Kwame Nkrumah, that politician, and not that person who have that depth in terms of the consciousness that you're speaking about. With that being said, Kwame Nkrumah is considered to be one of the paramount Pan-Africanists. When we hear the term Pan-African, what are we supposed to understand by that?
Thank you for that. Pan-Africanism is more of like a movement that seeks to unify Africa and its diaspora. Of course, it has a long history. It dates back to around 18th century, and it continues to be relevant up to date. So we actually have to look at Pan-Africanism from even the origin. So the word Pan-Africanism was actually first coined by the same Jamaican lawyer and writer. He was called Henry Sylvester Williams in the 18th century. And that early Pan-Africanism actually focused on resistance to slavery and colonialism, you see. And the Pan-Africanism was also influenced heavily by the Haitian Revolution, which demonstrated the power of Black resistance. So you can actually realize this, that it was actually root deep, and it had the aspect of unification of Africans, you see. And this is where we get the key aspect towards the Pan-Africanism itself.
So with that being said, who are some of the more well-known Pan-Africanists that we can turn to, that we can explore in order to help to sensitize our people about the history of Pan-Africanism and those who would have contributed to that effort over the years?
Thank you for that. Indeed, there are so many people who are involved with Pan-Africanism, but there are people whose actually opinions or names cannot disappear when you talk about Pan-Africanism. As I've said, we talk about, of course, Henry Sylvester, who actually coined this aspect of Pan-Africanism. But beyond that, we'll have to look to other people like Webb Du Bois. You have to look for other people like Marcus Garvey. And you have to go extra mile even to look now at the efforts of Kwame Nkrumah. We look at the efforts of course, other people attending various Pan-African forums, you see. We had the Pan-African forums that took place for several years before and several occasions, if you can recall very back, that we had the first Pan-African conference that was actually organized in London, and this was organized by same Sylvester Williams. And among the delegates, we had even people like Webb Du Bois, we had Samuel Collier Taylor, and there was also another Pan-Africanism that was organized between forums that were organized between 1919 to 1927, and it involved a lot of people. Like in 1919, it was in Paris, that was organized by also Marcus Garvey. There was 1921 in London, Brussels. There was 1923 in London and Lisbon. There was 1927 in New York. and Marcus Garvey, Webb Du Bois played critical roles in some of these organizations. We also see the Manchester Pan-African, the 5th Pan-African Congress, that was also attended by Kwame Nkrumah and Jomo Kenyatta, part from Kenya. And there are other organizations that also came in, like the Organization of African Unity that was in 1963, though it was not technically a Pan-African conference, but it had an instant and significance towards the Pan-African journey. And other gatherings have been taking place, as you know, from 1974, 1999, in Kampala, Uganda, 2014, in Johannesburg. So all these have been actually incidences where the organization of Pan-African forums have been taking place.
So we see a number of young Africans are now stepping up and participating in the effort for the liberation of Africa and for a much more cohesive collaboration with Africans in the diaspora. Apart from yourself, are there any others that you can point to that is really on stream like you are in terms of that kind of outreach and in terms of that kind of messaging?
Permit me to actually recognize that our elders, of course, the older generation a bit, have pushed this struggle for Pan-Africanism for long.
Right.
And actually, they have done a lot. They have gone through a lot of experience. Some might be covered with failures in their processes. Some might be disappointed in the processes. Some might actually given up in the processes. But actually, the struggle has not been effectively transferred to the younger generation in active push for this. But we see actually still other proactive Pan-Africans like Professor Lumumba. We see likes of Malema. We see Arikana. People are moving around to still revive the spirit of Pan-Africanism. And the younger generation especially may age have been missing a bit, or even if they are advocating this, probably they haven't got enough publicity to actually appreciate the work they are doing. And I think it's very important that we have intergenerational discussion and conversation on how actively we can put the younger generation into the limelight to share the Pan-African spirit. Because actually, as where we are today, the agenda or the fulfillment of Pan-African vision is to the advantage of the younger generation and their generation to come than to the older generation who have tried their best up to this particular moment. So it's a matter of time that some of my fellow younger people, is a challenge to them, that we must think beyond a village, beyond a region, beyond a country, to think in globe, in African perspective, and beyond Africa, to our brothers in diaspora and in Caribbean. Because that's what makes the next generation, and that's what defines the success of Pan-Africanism. So it's a matter of us to come in.
Speaking of the Caribbean, I live in the Caribbean. Brother John is from the Caribbean, but he's presently residing in Canada. How significant would you say is that relationship with us out here in the Caribbean or in the West, as it's generally called, to the whole Pan-African struggle?
The history of our brothers in Caribbean is the darkest part of our history as a people. Because it actually reminds us of the dark things that were done to us as a people. The separation of a mother from a son, a husband from a wife, and a family. It was actually the bitter thing and the worst thing to happen to us as a people of Africa. And it's not that, as it has been said sometimes back, that some of our leaders sold our brothers to the Caribbean. It must also be recognized that some actually tried to refuse or reject this. But the pressure that was compelled on them was maybe so superior, just the same way colonialism was not by choice, it was by force. And we must recognize also what they went through in the transatlantic ocean. Is the worst history that nobody wants to talk about. In fact, those who did it are not ready even to pay for it or even to talk about it. But it's a thing that we can never forget. It's a thing that we must always keep on the limelight and keep remembering. Lest we forget, we might go back to the same. And therefore, it is our relationship with the Caribbean is a very powerful tool and a powerful history that must judge our present and the future as a people. And that we must actually extend our brotherhood and our hand to the Caribbean. I know there are some people in the Caribbean who don't still feel like they are Africans. In fact, you are Africa because Africa is born in you, not because where you are, and this is what Nkrumah said. So irrespective of where you are, the same way in Canada, you are an Africa. And no matter how cool and sweet the Caribbean appears to be, you have a right to come back home. It was never home in the first place. It's a home away from home. But the Africa must accept to bring you back home, and you must be ready to come home. And the African governments and the people of Africa must extend the welcoming hand to our brothers in the Caribbean if they so wish to repatriate back to Africa. But even if they stay away, it's still our responsibility to take care of our lost brothers who went away, because we cannot forget that we are no longer brothers because they're away. So it reminds us, and you see, when I talk of the history of Pan-Africanism, greatly affected by or inspired by the Haitian Revolution. And we know very well that those who fought the Haitian revolutions are the people who, first of all, fought the independence for U.S. The civil war in the United States that actually led to independence of U.S. was the contribution of the black people. That U.S. state where it is a black people making. And it's the same inspiration that went back to Haiti and the Caribbean that then inspired the total revolution. It proved for the first time in early 1980s and early 1800 that the African could overpower the white man, that the African could fight and win a war. And therefore, the history of the Caribbean inspired even the fight for independence in Africa. And it continued to inspire and remind us of what we did. We remember the stories and the history of the Maroons and what they did in the Caribbean. So actually what I can say is that we must extend our brotherhood in terms of, one, welcoming our brothers from the Caribbean back to Africa, stand in solidarity with them in case of any emergency and any war, share our culture and share our experience together, and know that we are children of the same mother, just in the different setups.
Yes. So we are admonished to never forget the Jewish Holocaust. But anytime we speak about the African Holocaust, we are dismissed and being told that, oh, it's time to forget that, it's time to move on. And while the Jewish people, their generations, have been receiving reparations, the conversation of reparation is avoided. We haven't even had an official apology up to this point in time. All they do is express sentiments of, oh, we are sorry that it happened, but it's time to really let it go. How do you really see the state of affairs with regards to the present crop of African leaders and their sentiments towards the whole Pan-African movement?
Permit me to say that we don't need the apology. We need justice, and apology is not justice.
Okay.
Can they wake up our brothers that they threw on the Atlantic Ocean to apologize for them? Just apologize, and they feel that those our brothers will be satisfied with that. In fact, even payment is not enough because there's no price for life and blood that is shed. In fact, payment is the minimum that they can do, not the maximum they can do, it's the minimum they can do. And we demand it. You see what they put on Haiti to pay for colonialism. And they justified why they should pay for colonialism. And they don't have any shame or any integrity to pay for the death they caused to us. They developed their countries. And in fact, the wealth of their countries is our product of our resources, our product of our labor, and our product of our sacrifices. And therefore, I think it is honorable enough to them who call themselves so civilized to do what civilization means, or to be a gentleman is. Just pay for it, because that is the minimum we demand. It's not apology, but that must also ring to their mind that it's not enough. If we were to do that to them, you know what they did during the Marshall Plan, the World War II, the Marshall Plan. If they had the audacity to do the Marshall Plan and repair what they destroyed, are we not human being enough deserving reparations? And these are questions that must go deep to them, and they must understand that actually our ancestors are crying for reparations, and they must do that to us. In regard to Pan-Africanism in the continent today, I must say that the current crop of leaders, the so-called presidents and top leadership officials in the governments today, are not actually progressive or radical Pan-Africans as they were those who founded the African independence. The likes of Amilcar Cabral, or the likes of Patrice Lumumba, the likes of even Frank Fanon, the likes of Kwame Nkrumah, even the likes of somehow or Nelson Mandela somehow, and the likes of so many other people, the Sobukwe and the rest. They were proactive and progressive Pan-Africans. But the spirit of Pan-Africanism has been diminishing among the politicians as we are coming up with the new crops of so-called Pan-Africans. And today we are having the liberal and conservative Pan-Africans who tend or appear to be occupying spaces of leadership, whose interest is only themselves or their family. And therefore, the true action and spirit of Pan-Africanism is disappearing in the leadership of Africa. And we must also allude this to the interference of the Western countries who are actually afraid of Pan-Africans or progressive Pan-Africans into political leadership in Africa. We have seen what they have done in terms of assassination to those who became proactive. And now we have lukewarm, we can call them puppets or stooges of the West, who are actually afraid of the work and this vision of Pan-Africanism, which is unity of Africa. And even African Union having been formed. But just let you know that I did an application to be the next chairperson of African Union Commission. And I did that and presented it to the president of my country, even though he hasn't called me so far, but it's an extension to show my interest also to be the AU chairperson, because I believe that the mandate of unifying Africa, liberating Africa cannot wait up to 2063. If it waits up to 2063, it will be over 100 years just to unite yourself, where the US never took those 100 years to unite themselves. It was just more civil war and they united. I believe that the unification and the total liberation of Africa is now. It was now in 1963, and it cannot be in the next 40 years in 2024.
Brother, okay, I was just going to bring Brother John in, but he seemed to have left his seat. Well, that's being the case, where do you see and what kind of what do you think is needed presently in order to solidify and to enhance the relationship between the Pan-Africanists on the African continent and those in the West?
We need more of Pan-African conferences, the same way the Pan-African conferences took place in those early ages, so that we can continue discussing the affairs of Africa. We need serious progressive Pan-African conferences. We need a roadmap as a people. We need to reignite and review the challenges and the progress we've made so far in order to act with clarity to achieve the vision of Pan-Africanism. Remember what Marcus Mosiah Garvey said, that back to Africa and Africa for Africans. And this was echoed in the 1957 All Pan-African Progressive Conference that took place, the first Pan-African conference to take place in the soil of Africa in Ghana, that actually reiterated the same sentiments, you see. And I think that there's been silence and there's been less communication between the continent and the Caribbean. And now we've been seeing this interaction coming more and more. And therefore, we need to encourage more of this conversation. We need to encourage more forums and conferences, but we need also to act as a people. The continent belongs to the people, not the few leaders. It's the people. Pan-Africanism is the spirit of the people, and it's upon the people, and the revolution must lie on the masses, not on the few leaders. It's the masses that must dictate this, and that's why the first important thing is need to be a lot of consciousness and awareness between the masses to embrace and actually to come about to speak about unity and Pan-Africanism and to advance our shared aspiration as a people so that we can actually achieve what's ahead of us.
You mentioned Haiti a while ago and its significance to the whole emancipation movement. What's your take on what is presently happening in Haiti? What do you think is actually responsible for that level of chaos? And do you believe that there is some outside influences driving what is happening in Haiti?
There has always been outside influence, not only in Haiti, even in Africa. Because you can't tell me our people hate each other so much that they can fight and kill each other. But there are people who are actually ready to divide us. And you see, that's why our balkanization into small countries is not for the benefit of Africans, it's for the benefit of the West. And they benefit a lot, and we know them, call them the US and the rest. We know their interests, and I think they are also shameful. They have never accepted the defeat by the Haitians during the early 1800s. And they're trying still to come back to show that they're so more superior than that, what happened. But they should be reminded that the Haitians who fought the independence war, the revolution, are not dead. They might be dead, but their spirit is not dead. And the best we must also realize as the people, whether the so-called gang leaders, who are actually to me are people who are trying to save their nation, they must realize that they should not actually kill their people in order to send a message to the colonial master. They must embrace and activate the solidarity, even though we know that there are some few within us who actually vote and serve the West. But those also who serve the West must also realize that it's never to the interest of their people. You must always side with your people. No matter what it takes, you must always die with your people and not sell your people. So I actually call for a peace in Caribbean, and not only in Haiti, in Congo is going on, in Sudan is going on, in Cameroon is going on. And you know who sells the guns and who manufacture the guns. I'm not sure if there's any gun manufacturing plant in Haiti. I'm not sure if there's any in Congo. And they are not fighting with machetes, they are fighting with guns. So who is the owner of the gun? And who is selling the gun? And therefore we must follow the gun from the source. And that actually tells you who is interested in the war. Is the owner who want to do business with our lives? And that must be conscious enough to people who want to use gun to kill ourselves or kill each other. That's not to the interest of us. So that is what I can say clearly, that really the forces, external forces are seen already. They are not even ready to accept the humiliation they got many years ago, and they still want to come up to cover up for this. We know the exploit resources. I just got a review of a video of how many companies that are in Haiti, including Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and the rest. So what are they doing there? And who are the owners? Yeah, who are the owners? And if the Haiti is poor and the Haiti is not peaceful, why are they staying there in the first place? So that tells you really who is behind these wars across Africa, even now what you're seeing in Palestine, and what happens all over. We know them, and they have a good history.
And interestingly, the workers in Haiti, they had a protest in order to get a little increase on their wages, and the authorities came out and were very violent with them.
I think
in defense of these big companies. Yeah.
I think that should also be a message that must be sent to our military officers and police officers.
Mm-hmm.
I know majority of them are trained by the West, but they must realize that their duty is to protect a country. And that's why when some of them intervene, maybe when a country is going wrong, like what Burkina Faso does or did, is actually to interest of protecting a country, not protecting a president. A police officer is to protect the nation, not a president. And therefore, they need to intervene in the protection of a country, not against the people. No matter how much they are paid, they must also be conscious enough that there are people like us, and they must not actually use the few power they have and the ammunitions they have to actually kill our fellow brothers and sisters. We are one people. We cannot afford to kill each other. There's a lot of threats we are facing as Black people out there, and we cannot afford to be enemies of each other and kill each other. So the police officers must be conscious enough to use the tool they have in hand to liberate us, not actually to kill us.
Okay, well, I know that you have a limited time here with us, and I want to bring Brother John in on the conversation because I know he must be itching to make a contribution here this afternoon. Brother John.
Yes. Good evening, comrade. Good evening. It's my pleasure to be sitting here and listening to you with a wealth of knowledge on not only your country but the world and wherever Black people are settled. It's interesting to know that you are very much aware of our Caribbean country, Haiti, and what is going on there. My question, though, are you willing to galvanize a collective group of people around the world in a different part of the diaspora to help as Kwame Nkrumah was helped by C.R. James and the rest to put and to create the independence for Ghana? Are you willing to go that length again? as C.L. James and Oliver Cross and all the other comrades that gone before you?
I'm willing even to go an extra mile to repair the Africa. That's why I even applied to be the chair commission of African Union, because many people have said it's been a toothless bulldog. But I understand why it has been that. And that doesn't mean that you cannot attempt to change, because everything is always impossible until you attempt it. But when you attempt it and make a change, it becomes possible. So, yes, we are willing to take very progressive and call upon Pan-Africans who are willing also to galvanize, to call for total liberation of us as a people, whether in the continent or outside of the continent. We have actually never achieved liberation. We are trying to move away from this, because liberation means total freedom and total non-interference on your affairs. But tell me, where are we not interfered? Even people claim that the independence we got was just a flag and an anthem. And probably it's true. It might be a flag and an anthem. We moved from colonialism to neo-colonialism. And what goes on is our black brothers now serving as masters of the white. And this is very painful to us as a people. So we are being ruled again by our people through proxies. And it's upon us to fight to our best. There's nothing impossible. I'll give you a story of our Mau people who use a machete to get into the forest for 7 years fighting a white man with a gun and helicopters. But they never gave up. It was the consistency and the commitment in them that actually made them succeed at the end of the day. So we might feel inferior or powerless, but indeed, if we tap to our inner power, history has shown us that the Haitian Revolution was successful, and we can do the same.
Yes, I agree. And I think that one of the things that we have to consciously do is to maintain the struggle, to continue to fight, continue to reject the neo-colonialism effort to keep us colonialized through our leaders. And you make mention earlier on that the effort that is made by the previous leaders, like Nkrumah and others like him, they have been short-lived. They assassinated them because they'll be more progressive and bring benefits for their people. In recent time, we have Burkina Faso and others right now are trying their best to bring normalcy and to bring a level of patriotism and economic development to the people that they don't serve. And we see that the US and France are engaged in destabilization efforts, even to go call them crazy. How is your organization willing to help step up and stand in the gap to defend Burkina Faso through your method of operation?
You see, it was Bob Marley or Lucky Dube who talk about the emancipation of the mind. Emancipate yourself from the mental slavery.
Right.
In reality, we might have been physically free, and what Chancellor Williams talks about in the destruction of black civilization. But we are voluntary, mentally enslaved. Voluntary. We are voluntary, think that it's the way through can solve our problem. And I know it's a clear solidarity support to stand with people who are actually trying to liberate us. And as you all know, that our current setup as a continent is not towards our liberation. And therefore, we need a change in mentality and thinking. And that is what Sankara said, that it took the madmen. So when the West call you mad, it means you're doing the right thing. It means actually you're doing what's supposed to be done. Because everybody who is comfortable with the system today is the person who is mad, not people who are trying to change it. But it seems the mad people see the other people mad more than them. But if it takes madness, then it's good to all of us to be mad to make a change, you see. So what I say that we stand in solidarity with them, and we're looking forward to Africans to join and have an honest conversation. And I think the current leaders of Africa or African Union should actually now have an honest conversation. This is not the first coup in Africa. There has been either reactionary coups or progressive coups. But the question is, why coups? Why coups? That should be the question. And if there is a missing up why people take to coup, then why don't you address the problem? Because actually coups are just symptoms of a problem. And what now the Niger is doing by actually getting off the what you call the Continuation for Colonization Pact by the French. And you see, how can people be comfortable with that document? That's a total exploitation, and we call it shared wickedness. How can French control your resources, your money, and everything else? And people have been comfortable with this for over 50 years. So I think people must not actually criticize any progressive forces that are, or challenges that have been taken, or steps, but we must sit down and have an honest conversation. Because if we don't have it, we are prone to face the consequences. And you see, if you can also call, some of these coups have been bloodless coups. I'll ask you a simple question. How many lives are being lost during the so-called democratic, peaceful transition of election to election? Many people die. Many people die than what takes place in this other side. So the question is, and that's why we call the solution for Africa is a united government, a united African government. Because if you're Balkanized like this, they get a space to come in and loot your resources today. And our Balkanization do not serve to our base benefit. For example, I'll tell you another simple question. A Lesotho or Swaziland with a population close to 1 million, if they go to negotiate any economic deal with China, where is a win-win there? Look at the population, look at the economics of index. Then maybe Lesotho will say that you are opening our market for China, and China is telling you are opening our market for Lesotho. What will Lesotho sell in China? And how much will China use to take the resources in Lesotho? So these are part of the conversation that I believe we must have to ensure that we have a constructive discussion, not criticism, but a discussion, so that we can have a way forward.
Right. I agree. Because one of the things that often happens is that our resources, big or small, the colonialists seem, or the imperialists seems to plunder it and use it for their own benefit and make us feel inferior. Africa is not poor. Africa is rich. Haiti is rich. But the people are poor. Right? And that is the thing that we have to, that I see is happening in Burkina Faso, the development and the transitional government procedures to ensure that economic power return to the people so they can benefit from their own natural resources and not that of the foreign government. So Pablo, back to you.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Brother John. And I really want to say how grateful I am to have our brother Pigbin joining with us here this evening to have this conversation and to share with us what is really taking place, what the situation is, what is required in terms of a serious Pan-African agenda between Africans at home, Africans on the continent, and us Africans in the diaspora, and to speak about the situation in Haiti. Now, you mentioned about, and we have been keeping tabs on what's happening in Africa, and we see that Niger, we see that Burkina Faso, we see Mali, they have taken matters into their own hands to take charge of things. And we have seen that ECOWAS, which is supposed to be a grouping of African countries to look after the interests and welfare of the African people of that region and the economies of that region, we see that they have sanctioned them and they have more or less been taking a position that one may consider not in the best interest of these countries. But these countries have continued to resist. What can you say about that relationship between these countries and ECOWAS, and the kind of what would have caused ECOWAS to take such drastic sanctions against Niger that really begun to bring the kind of hardships that the people were experiencing?
I'll term it as a symptom of denial. You know, when you're going through any stress, the first thing you do is you deny. It's always the first mechanism. If maybe you deny somebody has not passed away, you first of all deny. You go in denial. And the ECOWAS went in denial. But you see recently, in fact, Nigeria opened their border with Niger. It's the same way Putin was telling the US that you cannot ignore China. Because if you ignore China, you don't have any base for you. So there are some things that are actual realities that the first reaction can be actually symptoms of denial or actually instruction from the West to make you react. But at the end of the day, the ECOWAS must realize that those in Niger and Burkina Faso are Africans, not the whites. And it's their responsibility to take care of the welfare of the Africans. Unless the Africans are suffering there, they need to intervene. But if the people are seeing some progress, why do you have to intervene? Honesty call upon defending what is right. So what is injustice? I know the processes. Democracy is just a simple system. It's not what inherited. Why do we have to defend it in the first place? You see? So, and in fact, there's no democracy in Africa. I'll tell you for plain. The doctrines of democracy is never followed in any democratic. They call democratic process which are never democratic in the first place. There's no any elections majority in Africa that has ever been fair. And it must be observed by the West to say that it was fair. And no African country go to the West to observe the election and call it fair or clean and whatever. So basically, what happens to our context is that the West Africa and ECOWAS were acting in denial. But it's true, and I appreciate they are coming to their senses. There are some realities that you have to accept, no matter how hard you try to object or reject them. And if they go in the same direction as the Burkina Faso actually threatened, they'll walk away from that ECOWAS, and I've said they will do that. Because why do you have to retain something that does not serve the interests of the people? At the end of the day, we must know that we come to power to serve the interests of the people. And if the people are suffering, why do you have to retain power? The welfare of the people is our supreme law. And above all, I must also express my disappointment with the Kenyan posting to lead a mission in Haiti, which to me I see as actually we call them the white man in the black color. And we know that there's been weaknesses and so many talks that have been talked about my president in Kenya, which we are actually clear of is true. And we must also challenge him to be honest enough to the people of Africa, must appreciate the history and the past of people of the Haiti and the Caribbean, and must actually always work and defend the people. I know the gangs are also doing something so harmful sometimes by killing so many people there. And actually, that's why I said that they must also be conscious that it's not the people who are their enemy. The enemy is outside there. They should stop killing their people. They must face the enemy outside there, you see? And at the end of the day, I also have to say that, yes, we have to have sober leadership, progressive leadership, honest leadership. But the leadership must be for the people. The West, who say democracy is for the people and by the people, why are they here in Africa and interfering with their affairs? Are they the people whom they refine their democracy? So they must give us space actually to practice what is necessary for us and live by ourselves. We must also be, as African, understand that our resources are more important. You see, they come for our resources, then you go there to beg for their loans. That is mental slavery. They pick to your resources, they build their companies from your resources. I got access of a research that was done over 101 London-listed companies in London Stock Exchange that operate in Africa, and they are controlling up to $1.1 trillion minerals in Africa, and they have mining rights. So our minerals are being mined by the West, and we go to their companies to work for them. Why don't we take over the minerals and they go away, wait for our resources? But now they are controlling our mineral, pay us poor wages, employ our young people in our soil, while we go out there to beg for loans and maybe spend hours. I'm not against the people who pray, but spend hours from Monday to Sunday praying God to help us while we leave our resources for them to exploit. That's total madness. And in fact, that's why I say they are the mad people, not us who are trying to change. Because there's no way manners will come from heaven to exploit whatever is below you. And that's why there are war in Africa and war in Haiti. What is their interest is what is below the soil. And they can kill anything above the soil to get what is below the soil. But we are here thinking of what is above the heavens. While the people are concentrating on what is below the soil, we are thinking of what is above the heavens. We are still keeping our riches where the moth cannot reach. No riches at all. What are we keeping for the moths that cannot reach in heaven? While in earth here, everything is being looted and become beggars of our own farm. So this is the mental slavery I'm talking about. And this is the emancipation we must have. We must know that through our wealth, as you sometimes, in our class, we talk of matter. Through the matter, in this case, our soil and our land, we can actually have everything we need. The money, the banks, the vehicles, everything. Our welfare can be proper through our wealth, not through prayers alone, through our wealth. And they lied to us, as you know, the famous story. They gave us the Bible, they told us to close our eyes, and when we closed our eyes, they took the soil and left us with the Bible.
A major part of the debate going on in relation to Africa and bringing Africans together, African unity across the continent, is the borders that the Europeans have left us. What is your perspective on that? And how critical is it to the whole issue of African unity? And what role do you see it playing presently in some of the conflicts that are taking place in Africa?
My brother, imagine some people sat somewhere, took a map and drew a line on a map. Then we come out who never sat in that map or sat in that forum to defend a line that was drawn on a map. And now take it far away from a map to reality by building blocks to actually represent the same map. You see, Africa, and if you see even the territory that they drew, they were never actually blocked. They were never fences or walls. But we have taken literally even how to build fences and walls just to show the direction and the distinction. Actually, the balkanization and what we call the partition of Africa was the biggest attack that we faced. And actually, the solution to all our problems we have is just to go out, take away those borders in our mind, because majority of these borders are mental. Let's just take away them from our mind and act as a people. Because how do you divide one family plus another family? I'll tell you, and this is the question I put forth. Do you think there's any problem between one community with another community in Africa? But there's a problem between one country and another country in Africa. Why? Because those borders sometimes did not actually consider the resources underneath, and therefore there are less resources in the other side, and there's a struggle of resources. But the people from both sides are one African. So the borders must be actually removed, and that's why we are calling for unification of Africa. We cannot defend borders that we never drew in the first place. And now we are defending to our life and are proud of them. How do you become a proud of something you never drew in the first place? Your ancestor never drew it, your father never drew it, somebody drew it for you, but now you want to defend it more than that. That's the same way I'm always saying that the gospel and the religion was never our making. We practice our spirituality. But today we are killing each other because of religion. I'm a Christian and you're a Muslim. That's bullshit and nonsense. How do you defend something that you never introduced in the first place? It's something that was put on you, and the history of such religion even being imposed on you was through gunshot. But now you want to defend it the same gunshot. That's madness. And that's why I say the biggest problem we have is actually the mental emancipation, not even the physical emancipation. We are not in chains physically, we're in chains mentally. And we must actually be conscious enough and start having these conscious discussions so that we can actually liberate ourselves. It's very simple. It won't cost any much. It will only cost you to change your attitude and your mind. Simple.
So with that being said, before you leave us for the afternoon, because our time is really coming to an end, our hour is almost literally at hand. Considering the fact that most of the north of Africa is Islam and the rest of Africa isn't, you have the issue of the borders, you have the issue of the Francophone versus Anglophone, and so on. How significant do you see these distinctions among Africans as being an inhibition, being a challenge, being a barrier to accomplishing that African unity of which we're speaking?
They are a barrier, but we have chosen to make them a barrier. Will they kill us today if we start learning another language apart from their language? And you see, Ngugi wa Thiong'o said in his book, Decolonizing the Mind, the language is a carrier of culture. So the more you practice someone's language, the more you practice their culture. And you embrace their culture at the expense of your culture. Now, in our Consciencism class, I am a teacher by profession, and I've dedicated my volunteering time to teach Kiswahili, which I believe has and resonates more with African setup than all other languages. And I do it every Tuesday, 6 p.m. GMT for free, just to contribute to the conversation of unifying the continent via language. And we must realize and take conscious steps. The Chinese are now learning Kiswahili. Why are the Caribbeans not learning Kiswahili? The whites are learning Kiswahili. Why are we not learning Kiswahili? Because they know the advantage and the value and the power of language. But we are languishing here. So let's have a program where we can teach Kiswahili, for example, to all Africans, both in the continent and outside the continent, so that we can start uniting. Because that is the practical unity aspect. When you can speak one language, is unity. When you can have one telephone line, is unity. Today we have so many telephone lines all over. When you can have one currency, is unity. Today everybody has their own currency. Why don't you have one currency as a continent, you see? And that currency will be backed with our mineral resources. It will be the strongest currency ever. Why don't you have one common government? Why don't you have a free market for all of us? Why do you have to impose visa from the next neighbors? And now you have a visa free from UK to Kenya or US to Kenya, but somebody from Ghana to Kenya must pay visa. What nonsense is that, really? So these are things that can be done by just a pronouncement. They don't need years to be done. It's committed people can sit down and say, now we are doing away with this. And just by that pronouncement, it's over, because even their imposition was just a pronouncement. They said, we are putting this, and that's how it came in. So I don't think it's very hard to overcome them. It needs commitment and a will to do them. But that will also has to be pushed, because we know today there are so many negative forces that are acting on the continent, the positive forces. Therefore, the unity of positive, conscious thinkers must be very important in order to fight this. It's not one-man fight. It's both conscious people coming together. You see, I'll give you a practical example that I do give people. There were never 100 missionaries. In their so-called setup and their stories of Jesus, he only had 12 missionaries. But today, everybody is a religious person, is a bishop, is a pastor, is a missionary on his own self. So why do you have to meet so many people to make the change? It only takes few of us to be the missionaries of Pan-African gospel, and the next generation will take it up. We know they are fighting us, trying to assassinate us, but as it was said, you can never kill the spirit. I think it's also another reggae song that said that. You can kill the messenger, but you can never kill the message. So the spirit keep alive, the spirit keep us going, and we'll never give up. No matter what they do, we will never give up. Thank you.
Thank you,
Pablo.
Thank you. Hey, Brother John. Yeah.
Thank you, brother. I want to just drop in on one thing he said here. And I think today we had a similar discussion around the Constitution. Yes? They had their revolution by arms. They take power by arms. They continue to do it by arms today. But they want us to vote, to have a so-called democratic process to come into power. But when that is being done, they kill our leaders and those who are trying to win the national liberation for the people, economically, socially, and politically. They eliminate our leaders one by one, and they were asking us to have democracy. It's just a fact. They're just chatting that to keep us in subjection. I just want to just make that point, because I just want to strengthen what he just said. Because we as a people, we are neo-colonialized mentally, and we discussed this morning about the constitutional committee that is apart from just being Grenadian. They have that grouping, that swaying, still have this mental slavery mentality of being the queen, a king, council kind of a grouping to maintain the constitution that was given to us. We're not allowed us to be free as we want to be. So the question is still, to those of us, are we free as we want to be?
No, really, permit me to come in.
Yes.
The British has an unwritten constitution, the Magna Carta.
Yes.
Why do they force us to have written one? And the second place, why don't you have just a continental constitution? One constitution for all African, wherever they are, is one law. Why do you have different laws all over? Yeah. And at the end of the day, why are they interested in our laws? As if we never had laws to govern ourselves in our traditional setup. We had it. We had laws that governed the society, and societies were peaceful. We had laws, and we had the Council of Elders. We had, in fact, they borrowed our judicial and our civilization. They went and copy-pasted it and brought it back to us after destroying ours. They borrowed ours. We are the source of civilization. And they borrowed it. They go copy it, make it in our way, and come back to us. So basically, we must realize how powerful and superior we are, and we must work towards our own affairs. I'll tell you for sure, they know how developed we are, and they know if we are free, there'll be nowhere. So it's to their interest to continue subduing us to where we are, but it's not to our interest to continue actually submitting to that. It's not to our interest. So our interest must come first, and they must realize this. It takes one step, and I'm telling you, they'll give up if we become united and strong enough. But anytime we show some weaknesses, they always tend to continue moving on and moving on. You know, I think if the so-called creation and anything happened, we were blessed to be in a sweet space. And that's why they're pushing us with their family planning. They're pushing us with so many other things. Why are we planning the family? And the continent is so bigger than any other continent across the world. We have a big space here dominated where we can give back to anybody we want, marry everybody we want, and ensure that we still have abundance in our setup. But they want us even to come up with what you call GMOs, that you have maize and products that work in Africa. Their climate cannot support maize and everything else or agriculture. So they have to come with their GMOs to fit to their weather. But why are they forcing us on us? So basically, I'm telling you, What we suffer most today is mental enslavement or mental slavery. And this one will not take sometimes the guns, but it takes the power of the mind. You see, I think Steve Biko is the one who said that the greatest tool in the hand of an oppressor is the mind of the oppressed.
True.
So it's our mind. That's the greatest tool they have.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, bro. Well, as we round up with you for now, and I expect that we are going to have you back sometime as we let you go on to your other program. Any closing words that you want to share with our viewers and listeners?
Well, but I have remembered that I've been invited to attend the UN Permanent Forum for People of African Descent and also the European Minority Parliamentarian Caucus, a conference that will be taking place from 11th in the UN on 11th to 20th. Of course, I'm trying to see how I can mobilize myself to be there. It have to take some coins and some amounts that's actually beyond my reach for now. But I know the solidarity will be there and our speech will be there so that we can share if I can be able to reach out to that conference. Because the biggest thing I want to put forward is I want to put forward African agenda on the UN table. It's never united if we are not actually, our issues are discussed there. They call it a United Nations, but really, is it united for us? Because our affairs are not actually tabled there. And I want to take issues like reparation to the UN table, not Kenya trying to handle reparations of Mau Mau with another country. I want to take it there. And that's why I'm so interested to ensure that I make it there. And I believe all societies or all well-wishers might come along to make me be there. But beyond that, one thing that I'll actually say is that to my fellow younger people of my age or below my age, we must realize that we are the solution for the continent of Africa. The same way young people have been so engaged in the climate issues, until even at an early age they're planting trees, we must plant the thoughts of Pan-Africanism as early as possible. We are working on what we call Pan-African Solidarity Fund, where we wish that Pan-Africans and Africans can put their money to set up Pan-African school, Pan-African hospitals, Pan-African roads, and build the welfare of the people without depending on the government. Therefore, it's a time in Pan-African space for synergy. It's not time to build more Pan-African movements. It's time to collaborate and work together so that we can actually speed up the actualization of our vision, which is the unification, liberation, and development of Africa. So I call upon Pan-Africans that this is the year for unification moving forward. And the unification of continent must start with the unification of us Pan-Africans, sitting together the way you've hosted me here, so that we can share thoughts and actions, so that together we can push our African forward. Lastly, I will say as I exit this, that I appreciate your invitation. I'll always come over anytime. And I call upon us to continue having more conversation between the Caribbean and Africa, because we are one. And therefore, it's my plea to all that let's side with Pan-Africanism. Let's do our best when we can, because we only got one life to live. And we can show our ancestors that even during our life, we did this to advance your struggles and your victories. And we will also be appreciating the future generation. It's time to fight for the justice of the past heroes, so that when we are gone, the next generation will fight for our justice. And that's my final plea. Unity is our strength.
Well, thank you much, Brother Pigbin Odimwengu from Kenya, taking time off to be with us here this afternoon on the Heart of the Matter. And I do look forward to having you here again. So with that, we come to an end with the conversation with our brother from all the way from Kenya. He has to leave us now. He has another session that he's going to, but Brother John and I definitely will be continuing here for a moment. Brother John, if you can just take a break, give us something, something.
Yeah, okay.
Something that.
Let you know, we are discussing Haiti in our class that's ongoing today. We are actually looking at the history of Haiti. So our Consciencism class has been dedicated today class to discuss Haiti. So we want to know the past of Haiti, the present of Haiti, in order to predict the future.
John, hey, John, can we just stay? Can we just stay? No, just stay. Yeah.
Yes, I was saying that our conscious class today is discussing Haiti.
Yeah.
And we want to go to the history of Haiti, because many people don't know the history of Haiti.
Okay, right. So you want to, yeah, we can continue here and share, and you share your, right. Wonderful. So, Brother John, we have a connection. We are connecting with the other session. Yes, and we continue the conversation is because there's a number of people have been on that platform with them already before, and it's some serious conversation.
Yeah.
So we're not going to.
I've been invited to speak at one last year.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm
Brother Pigbin. Yes, so
thank you very much. You are welcome on the other side if you wish to come. But we are actually doing a clear analysis and teaching the Pan-Africans to know what Haiti is. Because if you can't understand the history of Haiti, you cannot appreciate where they've gone for, and you cannot act properly in regards to your intervention. So thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to having you more and more in the coming future.
Right, Roger. Yeah, definitely.